Welcome everybody to this glorious Gather Town Ether Realm, concocted of course by Eliza. And this year, she with action team partner Casey Lau have made this exhibit space possible. And if you didn't realize, there are elevators that will take you to an underworld full of the digital reminders of last year's exhibit with 30 plus artists' works available. And if you're curious and you want me to guide you around those, I'd be happy to anytime. I decided this year to scale it down and really focus on a few artists and amp up the number of pieces so it would be a little less overwhelming and you could dive into those individual participants' works. And there are 4 people. One is long dead, but brought to the fore by Lola Wegman. And I'll probably start with hers. And the other 3 are living contemporary artists who incorporate insects thematically in their works. And I'll end with my mom, who's actually sitting to my left right now, and I'm surrounded by her glorious works in a cabinet of curiosities in her home just outside of Detroit, Michigan. She is the only returning participant from last year. So follow me, and we'll go right in the middle here. And now each of these exhibits comes with its own text, a didactic panel with the artist words or words by others relating to their work. So I definitely recommend peeking at those. But I'm going to open this one in the middle on the right, and this is a microscope slide, a compound microscope slide of all things. And way back at the turn of the 19th, 20th centuries, Harold or Henry or Harry Dalton, a Victorian microscopist, would produce these lovely works. And on the left of this slide, it says, butterfly scales arranged as a bouquet of flowers and grasses, etc. Now, if I leave that and go to the left, this is another establishing shot of one of his slides. So you see it's this exquisite little piece inside an exquisite container. He had a number of these, and they apparently were all the rage in the late 1800s and turn of the century. But only a certain number survive. And most of those are in one of my favorite museums in the world that happens to be in Culver City, Los Angeles, California, called the Museum of Jurassic Technology. And these photographs were taken by Lola Wegman, who works at the Museum of Jurassic Technology. It's a place of wonder founded by David Wilson, and a prize-winning book by Lawrence Weschler, Mr. Wilson's Cabinet of Wonder, chronicles the oddities in this museum. Well, Lola is writing a book on this microscopist, Harry Dalton, and let's follow and look at some of her beautiful photographs. So here, once you're able to see it, is a still life of a bouquet of flowers surrounded by hovering butterflies. And the remarkable part of it is each of those components is actually a diatom or a modified seta or scale from a butterfly wing. So reminder, diatoms are those single-celled eukaryotic organisms in the major clade of Straminopola, in the SAR group or clade of eukaryotes, those organisms with a nucleus in their cell. And they're the algae of the sea. So they can be dramatic and beautiful jewels of the sea. And oftentimes butterfly scales can be pigment-based, which means they'll fade with UV light, or iridescent. The structural nature of the surface allows for refraction that changes the hues as you look at them in different angles, which makes them difficult to photograph. So hats off to Lola for bringing out some of the magic from Harry Dalton's work. So we move from that bouquet over to the second, which is a close-up. And here you'll begin to see those iridescent qualities in either, well, I don't know if I see any diatoms, but I definitely see butterfly scales, which take so many different shapes and forms, and obviously colors. Also, if you look really closely, in some of the areas, there might be dark spots. And that is where Harry Dalton poked them. So when he had a slide under a microscope and he was drawing with little, well, actually, I can read to you straight from slightly modified version from the Museum of Jurassic Technology's site about his process. After devising a design, Dalton would collect numerous butterfly wings of multiple species from all over the world, carefully stripping off individual scales with a needle. Each scale was then sorted by color, size, and shape, creating an extensive palette. Boar bristle in hand, Dalton would then transfer each scale to the slide. Positioning a scale was a laborious task, one that required the use of a microscope and a small tube through which he would breathe to gently move each scale over the glass to its appointed position. Once in place, Dalton would crush a tiny spot of the scale against the slide, allowing internal oils to act as a natural adhesive. So get a load of that. There's no glue, there's no adhesive. He would poke the individual scale from a butterfly wing in order for that oil to trap against the glass. So if we continue on, you'll see funny other examples like, oh, here's some birds. If I continue on, oops, let me run around here to expose it. And a rooster and a chicken with little chicks ambling about. So no insects explicitly on display, but implicitly. So hidden within are the butterfly scales and others. And if we travel up past the establishing shots of the slides, we can see 4 more images. This first one on the upper left, we have a vase. And you'll see the diatoms, you'll see the iridescence of other elements. This is another close-up. I can't wait for Lola Wegman's book on Harry Dalton, because I asked her if she was going to include each and every slide, and she is. Oops. Let me see if I can pull that one up. Well, I'll go to the next one. There we go. And this one is a particular, I think this is a masterpiece. The upper right, just shy of the far right, you'll see a glorious still life vase with flowers and grasses and birds surrounding it. And yes, butterflies. So butterflies made of butterfly scales, I believe. The last one is a close-up of one of these slides. Oh yeah, there we go. Butterfly scales. Before we move on to exhibit participant number 2, does anybody have questions they'd like to ask about Harry Dalton, Victorian microscopist, and photographs by Lola Wegman of Museum of Jurassic Technology?
No questions, but those are amazing.
Great. Well, interrupt at any time. I'm happy to talk at length about any aspect of any of these people's works. For now, we will move on to the living. And I'll go to Elizabeth Jean Younts. And Elizabeth, I think I've got it in front of me. Oh, no, I can see it. So Elizabeth Jean Younts, I had the pleasure of interacting with over the last few years because I purchased one of her works that is magnificent. And I followed up and asked her if she would be willing to illustrate the cover and portions of my book, The Insect Epiphany. So we built a relationship, and she's wonderful to work with. She's a Los Angeles-based artist and commercial illustrator. She received her MFA, Masters of Fine Arts, in University of Wisconsin-Madison, which has one of the great remaining printmaking disciplines. And I'll go through her, she also leads her own shop called Mustard Beetle. So some of the works I'll be showing, actually all of the works I'll be showing are actually for sale as gigot prints or in some form. Okay, so this one, let's see, is, what is that? What is, hold on one moment. Oh yeah, it has the giant hairy scorpion. This is called Unforeseen. And this is one of a series of works focusing on an invasive species that disrupts a community of plants and animals largely. And here, the invasive species at play is the Malta-star thistle that's surrounding this giant desert hairy scorpion and a grasshopper mouse. There's also a bumblebee down there, Sonoran bumblebee. Okay, moving on to the next of this series of by Elizabeth Jean Younts. Oh, this is great. We've got the rarest, most endangered mammal in this community, and that's the black-footed ferret. There's also a differential grasshopper. There's the insect connection at the very center, and you think, oh, that must be the invasive species. But no, indeed, it's the plant right there. Let me find what it's called. I think it's the buffle grass. Yeah, must be the buffle grass. Yeah. And, oh, actually, I'm wrong. The invasive species is not easily detected in this list here. So we'll move on to our next one. Oh, and I don't think I can move with this virtual crowd around. Hey,
if you hold down the G key, people.
Wow, can I do that in real life? I'm gonna try it.
You could try.
Okay, and here's a roadrunner grabbing, well, an arthropod, a centipede, and you've got bees in the midst as well. And just as with the other cases, you've got stories of invasive species lurking here. If we continue on, oh, this is the sage grouse. And in this example, the cheatgrass, which is the invasive species disrupting this community. And you'll see a beetle on the right. Sure enough, I could walk right through. Love it. And the last on this wall, who can name the insect at play? In the maw of that bird? And that's an American dipper. And the invasive species is not that crustacean, not the crayfish, but the zebra mussels below it. And in the maw of the American dipper is stonefly nymph. So now travel with me all the way across to this color-coded hall of green on the other side. And we've got a few other works by Elizabeth Jean Younts. So cross all the way over, and now you'll be in the presence of a couple of more examples. And by the by, all of the ones I've shown you so far are graphite pencil drawings with watercolor. And these are bay checker spot butterflies. And this does not explicitly involve invasive species. This isn't so far, but this shows two species, both the plant and the butterfly, vulnerable to pesticides and other pollutants. And, sorry, the next one over, the final several works to the right of serigraphy or silk screens. So this is when you have a mesh used to transfer ink or dye onto a substrate, at least in some areas selectively, by blocking with a stencil other areas. And you'll see in each of these works, there's an insect protagonist. Any question about Elizabeth Jean Younts and her marvelous works? I recommend exploring her art website as well as Mustard Beetle, where she sells some of her works. I'll let you take a minute to admire. And then I'll move on to artist number 3 in the back hall of the gallery. Go. And the first work on the right here, let me see if I can actually get to it. Yeah. So you see the walls are bright red, dramatic red. Well, this is not due to an insect, cochineal bugs, but another massive installation work by Jennifer Angus at the Smithsonian Renwick Gallery. The walls were coated with cochineal, the pulverized bodies of scale insects feeding on Opuntia prickly pear cacti. So as a little background of Jennifer Angus, the Madison connection to Elizabeth Jean Younts, for the last 20 years plus, she's been a professor within design studies at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and she does exclusively site-specific installations. And she borrows from textile designs. That's a major focus of her work. And you'll see on the wall taxidermy mounts, bald-faced hornet nest with all manner of cicadas flapping away. Many of her works, as you'll see when you tour across the back section of the hall in this gallery, feature geometrically arrayed insects, or in some fashion, insects featured. So I'll bring you over to this first one on the far right. And this is, and I'll only bring you to one of these three, because the three on the right all are these domes. And I'm going to read to you from Jennifer Angus's writing. Within the glass domes, scenes of life and death are enacted by insects. They've been anthropomorphized so that the viewer might imagine them leading lives parallel to our own. They are to be found working, traveling, attending exhibits of some kind, teaching, studying, and even worshiping. This makes sense, for after all, insects are known to be industrious. And if you join me to and I'll step back so you can easily venture to all three of these, but you'll see three more on the left here. And those three feature works from a couple of exhibits, and one is called Blue. And Blue involved art intervention. And she writes, art intervention is a new work that interacts with an existing exhibit or display, causing it to be seen in a new way. And you'll see in Jennifer Angus's pieces, a couple of them, that she works in the style of the Wunderkammer, or Cabinet of Curiosities. And in one of these scenes, you'll see all kinds of either taxidermy mounds, wet specimens, and the rest. And within this already existing exhibit, she added her own flavor. And in one of these, you'll see cyanotypes in the back. And this is a 200-year-old simple form of photography that exposes... Actually, do you want to explain cyanotypes?
It's treated photosensitive paper, and you put the object on top of the paper and expose it to sunlight, for a very brief time, and then soak the paper in water, and the image comes forward from that.
Thanks, Ma. That was Karen Ann Klein. And so cyanotypes, you'll see this beautiful indigo blue in the backs of some of these exhibit cases. Also associated with some of Jennifer Angus's works, including this one, are jelly jars. So sugar, pectin, water, and a natural dye. And if you backlight them, as she has in certain exhibits, you'll see a twig of some plant and a beautiful insect just hovering, levitating, floating within this jam or this jelly. And she says, homemade jellies are often referred to as preserves. So it works perfectly in this vein of curation in this Cabinet of Curiosity. So as I head away from Jennifer Angus's works, does anybody have questions about Jennifer Angus or her beautiful installation pieces? Okay, number 4 of 4. Follow me all the way down to the lower left-hand side of the gallery. And I'll start right, may as well start right here.
The right-hand side?
Oh, this is the right-hand side, lower right-hand side of the gallery. And I'm looking at the upper left of this top tier by Karen Ann Klein. Oops. I think I have to approach it from the back side, so don't mind me. Or maybe I have to go here. There we go. So what I'm looking at in the left side with that beautiful blue background is what Karen Ann Klein, near Detroit, Michigan-based artist, produces what she calls ecological fiction, works of ecological fiction. And I'm sitting right now in her own room-sized and beyond Wunderkammer, or Cabinet of Curiosities. She'll create still lives that seem at the surface real, but they're twists of the impossible. So in these collections, you'll find marvelous assemblages of organisms, oftentimes including insects. So on the left here, we've got a Trenton tile from 2013. As with many of her works, there's a watercolor background with color pencil on top of it. And you'll see clearly that some of the works, like the one on the far right called Currency, also include indelible ink from Micron Pigma pens, for example. So Trenton tile is actually one of 24 images on the inside of a much larger insect cabinet that Karen Klein has created. The next one over, the second from the left here, is called Smallest of Birds from 2014. One drawing in a series of images of bees done for a project still in progress about the history and observation of bees. The next one over from 2018 is called Apollo Butterfly. And as my mother says, the butterfly is one of a series of butterflies named by Linnaeus after Greek myths. And this is in collaboration with an author in Detroit named Bill Harris. So text will go with that image later. And lastly on the right is Currency from 2016. Imagined currency using images of birds and insects. The denominations are unusual and have a secret purpose. The arrangement creates a magic square where the numbers add up vertically, horizontally, and diagonally to the number 34. If you travel down with me, over in this midsection of the gallery, on the left is a piece called Black Butterflies. And I have the original piece right here, and maybe I can show it to those who are interested later. This is from a book version of the same, created just last year. This is also watercolor color pencil work, but work of collage as well, and assorted printed papers. So the pages of a book commemorating the 1990 bombing of the National Library of Bosnia-Herzegovina. For days, the ashes of burned books fell on the city. Residents called them black butterflies. And you'll see the same work below, pages from that work below, just below where I am now. But right above, right here, oh yeah, where most of you are hanging out right now, this is Petragnatha gigas from 2010. So a handmade Peruvian frame and a cerambycid longhorn beetle with wavy appendages mimicking its unusual copper frame. And these works at the entrance, lower right of the gallery, on the far right, you've got Crypsis from 1997, rocks and leaves acting as a camouflage setting for a variety of insects. And then on the far left, the two remaining works, let me see which this one is. Oh, I know what that is. That's Eclipse from just last year, inspired by the total eclipse of the sun, which my mom, Karen Ann Klein, witnessed in Ohio. She created this drawing and painting. A memory of the 2024 springtime total eclipse of the sun, the darkness fooling moths to come out to fly in the afternoon. And one final work, Propomacris janseni, is a beetle whose legs mimic twigs like the frame that surrounds it. Now I plan to lead a little tour individually with each of these four participants in the exhibit. So at some point I'll make those available, or Eliza will make them available to accompany this really quick guided tour by me.